And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to present to you tonight for the sizzling Summer's Not Over Yet Labor Day lineup, two of the authors and the editor of the red hot award-winning Both Sides. Welcome, Alex Segura. Welcome, Cina Pelayo. We are waiting for Gabino. He was having technical difficulties. He'll be back in just a minute. Let's kick off. Welcome, Alex. Welcome, Cina. Tell us about Both Sides.
Cina, do you want to go first?
I was going to say Alex, but I don't want to do that. What?
Ladies before gentlemen, Cina, kick off.
So Both Sides is an anthology that was edited by the wonderful Gabino Iglesias and published by Segura Books. And it is an exploration of multiple authors and our experiences with borders. And that border identity varies from writer to writer. You know, for example, Alex's amazing story, award-winning short story.
Thank you.
You know, I reread it right earlier today, and I was just like, this is such a sad story. Brilliant. So, you know, his story deals with, I don't want to give away too much, but like the Cuban immigrant experience. My story deals with, the Puerto Rican diaspora. So, and Gabino brought together a collection of authors that really explored the border identity from very different avenues. So thank you, Gabino, for putting this together.
Yes, thanks for having us.
No, it was you guys did all the work. So
you guys did all the work. Gabino takes all the credit. This is working well for everybody. Alex won an award. Let's get into every tasty tidbit of it. But first, I just want to welcome everyone who is watching with us on Facebook, watching with us on YouTube, watching on my channels, watching on Murder by the Book channels, watching in my private face group, wherever you're watching from. Welcome. If you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, here's the drill. Every Monday for hashtag Mystery Mondays, because you know Mondays can be murder, I give you my hand-picked featured authors, and you get to ask them anything. Ask them about their writing. Ask them about their books. Ask them about their experiences that led them to these books. Whatever is weighing on your mind, get the questions going in the comments, and I will get them right over to the authors. So I know it always takes me a minute to think of questions. So while y'all are thinking and typing, I'm going to kick off. Gabino, why this book? Why now? It is both timely and timeless. Why now?
This is a country built by folks who came from other places. And every time we mention the border, we immediately think of the southern border. We immediately think about Mexico. And there's plenty of that in both sides as well. But when we say, for example, the LGBTQ experience, it's this umbrella term that we use for everything. The LGBTQ community is not a monolithic thing. They don't have all the same experiences. And the same happens with migration, with borders, with language, with leaving your country to come in search of the American dream. And I wanted to put something together that brought, and this is a perfect example because today here we have no one of the authors who wrote about the Mexican border. We have someone writing about Cuba, and we have the Puerto Rican experience, which sort of gets pushed to the side because we are born with the passport. We are forever a colony and second-class citizens, but they give us a passport and then they go like, "You're so lucky. Go find your pot of gold in the U.S." And I wanted to bring that together to remind people that every time that we talk about borders and migration and stuff like that, we are not talking about necessarily politics all the time. We are talking about people. We are talking about the narratives of individuals who leave their home country, their language, their family. In many cases, they carry their kids on a boat or across the border or put themselves in peril in search of the American dream. And it's not, yes, there's politics to it, but it's not entirely about politics. I want to rehumanize the discourse around migration. And what better way than to get perspectives and narratives from a whole bunch of different authors from many, many different backgrounds. And we have two of them here.
I love that. I love that. Kelly Garrett, welcome. What an honor to have you, author Kelly Garrett. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so honored, so thrilled to have you. Leslie is saying hello from Canada. That's her Canadian hello. That's her trademark hello, and it brings me so much joy. So we are international already. Leslie, top community member, always great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Kathy is saying hi, y'all, from Northern Arizona. I love Arizona. Gorgeous land out there. Great to have you. Lori Lee, welcome back from Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Sharon is saying hi from Minnesota. Sharon, always a pleasure to have you. Top community member here. Welcome from Minnesota. I love the other benefit about the pandemic is that we can be a national and international group of book lovers and mystery lovers here to united in our love of reading from everywhere around the country. I love that. Karen is saying, hey, from Nashville. Hey, Karen. Welcome, Mystery and Thriller Maven member there. Always a delight to have you. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us from Nashville. All right. So y'all know the drill. Just go ahead and type your questions in and I'll get them right over to our featured authors. And I will kick off. So I'm fascinated by this idea that Gabino that you talked about with borders and this immigrant experience and humanizing it, because that is what allows us to, I think, cultivate empathy. I was just talking about with Vera Curian, who was our last guest, about empathy and walking in someone else's shoes in the pages of their book allows us to experience their experience and to feel that tiredness or that fear or that empathy. I mean, it's hard to leave. I can't even imagine going, leaving my country and going to another country and not speaking the language. I mean, I can because I've traveled there, but to different countries where I don't speak the language, but to live there, it's hard to be an immigrant. And I think people don't realize that because, as you said, there's this attitude of, you're grateful that you got, be grateful that you got here, you lucky bird, you lucky dog. So thank you for that. Now, this book is resonating with people. It is doing well. Publishers Weekly raves, in this timely volume, readers will find rage as well as hope and occasionally a dash of spirit-lifting poetry. That from Publishers Weekly. Congratulations on that. Is that what kind of response were you looking for? Do you feel acknowledged by that? Do you feel seen by that? Tell us how the reviews have been landing.
I think this is one of those many fantastic books that were submerged under a pandemic. we released it in April, I think, April 2020, which is just smack in the middle of this thing. We could do no readings, no tour, no events. I could have gone to Chicago and New York because a couple of people would have driven there from the authors. We could have made a lot of noise if it was under very different circumstances, but that was not the case. So sadly, we had a few very big, Publishers Weekly, very few big reviews, and then it's sort of, we all panicked and we stayed home and we prayed for a vaccine. And that was, I think that's the way it went. But it is a special book, and it really, award season rolled around, and then it got nominated for a few things. And Alex, of course, won an Anthony for his story. So hopefully this will give it a second breath, and then folks will hear about it a little bit more. And go read it. To give you a taste of how special that book is to me, there is an author in this book, Isaac Kirkman, who lived in Arizona. We have Arizona folks in here. He was one of the best crime poets we have ever seen, and we lost him in January of last year. And this was, he texted me before he turned in that story. He said, I have other things to do with my life. I'm going to dedicate myself to other things. At the time, he was doing water drops along the border, and he said, this is going to be my last crime story. And every time that I have a chance to talk about the book or do a reading in the last year, I've dedicated to Isaac, because he didn't even live to see the book out. So there's Isaac Kirkman's last story in both sides. It's something that I would have loved to talk about at live readings, but we hadn't had a chance to do that. So hopefully now everybody's looking for Alex. And when they ask him, Alex, where's that award-winning story? He'll point them this way, hopefully all the way to like March. And then he'll hopefully we'll switch from plugging this to plugging the new thing.
For sure.
But yeah.
Alex, let's talk about your story, 90 Miles, selected to be included in the 2021 edition of the Best American Mystery and Suspense and a 2021 Anthony Award winner for Best Short Story. So short story, you don't have much space. You don't have 300 pages to go on and on and on and on, taking us through the full human experience of this person's life or the scene or whatever. How do you, my brain hurts trying to think about cramming so much in that little tiny package. How did you do it? What do you think the key is?
Well, here's a little secret about me is I actually don't even like writing. I don't like doing it. It's so hard. It's really challenging to do a really good short story. It's something that I'll do when invited, like a vampire. Somebody will say, hey, do you want to come in and do this story for this anthology? I'll say yes. But it's not something that's part of my regular writing routine where I'm like, I have an idea, I'm going to do a short story. It's usually a novel idea or a comic book or something else. But when Gabino invited me to be part of this book, I knew I wanted to do it. And I think short stories are vignettes. You're never going to get the full depth of a novel. You're not going to spend so much time with these characters. And that doesn't make it easier. That makes it more challenging. That means you have to really evoke who these people are, what their conflict is, and how it's resolved within, 5 to 10,000 words, if you're lucky to have that much space. So I think every word, it's, for me, the purest, the hardest kind of writing is like something like poetry, where every word has to exist and have meaning. And the short story is a few steps away from that, because there's no room for filler. There's no room for like plot detours or alternate, roads to be taken where you're just kind of expanding on stuff. This is really, everything is of meaning and has to be utilized that way. So, when Gabino asked me to be part of this book, I knew I wanted to write about the Cuban American experience. That chasm of water between the Florida Keys and Cuba is only 90 miles, but it's huge for some people, and it's really, and it's an impossible stretch for many other people. And I wanted it to be. I'm a noir writer. I write noir stories. I write dark stories, but this is probably the darkest thing I've ever written. But it's also the most hopeful thing, I think, because you read it, and I hope the takeaway is, I don't want to give away the story, but I hope the takeaway is, even in times of darkness, there's still like little flickers of hope.
I love that. Lori is saying we thank him for working through pain. Lori, what a lovely comment. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Let's talk about working through the pain. So were you, first of all, it's hard to write pain because it's hard not to be cheesy, verbose, overblown, or just so depressing people want to keel over rather than read it. So how did you balance writing that pain? Walk us through a day. Were you just sitting there like clutching your desk and deep breathing? Did you have to walk away and come back? Did you make yourself, did you cry? What's going on over there?
Yeah, I had to walk away a couple times. There's a moment where the protagonist is on the boat. He's kind of he's enlisted someone to get him across the waters to safety in Florida, and he tells the guy that it's just going to be him, but it ends up being him and his entire family, which includes his wife and his very young child. And there's a moment where the boat starts to lose control, and he looks at his son, and he just realizes, like, I've really screwed up. I've brought my family into this thing, and now, it's that first inkling that things might not go as well as you'd hoped. And that's depressing, because as well as you'd hope is to just survive, just to get there. And he starts to get this sense that things are going to go haywire. And that when I typed that out, I had to step away. And then, the good thing about short stories is I'm a big plotter with my novels. I like to know where everything goes, not to the point where I can't change things on the fly, but with short stories, I tend to just write. And at this point, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But then after writing that scene and coming back, I knew what had to happen. And that was depressing, but also important, I think.
And Alex, are you Cuban American? Is that how you identify?
Yeah.
Okay.
My parents came over as children. My grandparents came over as adults and had to start over completely. It's a very common story, but it's also a really personal one. My mom was a Peter Pan kid, and that was a program where Cuban children were flown to the U.S. to stay with relatives before they could come over with their parents. And so she spent a year with family, but not, your family is your nuclear family. It wasn't her close relatives. It was just relatives that happened to be in Miami, and that's where my grandparents wanted to go. But every story, you know, you don't want to compare stories. I mean, the story in my story is not what happened to them, thankfully, and it's not how they tried to get across, but it still really resonated with me while writing it.
Yeah, actually, my really good friend, Tatiana, who is a award-winning chef, a 3-time CHOP champion, and she's a Cuban American, first-generation American, Cuban chef, and one of the only female executive chefs in Boston of a hotel. And she has also competed on Beat Bobby Flay. She's incredible, and I love seeing the Cuban culture show up in her food. And I hope one day to make it to Cuba myself. Cina, let's pop over to you. What was your experience in writing your short story, and how do you write short stories, and what's this been like for you?
Right. Oh, wow. This was a tough one. This is probably the most difficult short story I've had to write. There's a lot of things that I feel like I just don't want to process, or I just don't want to think about. My father came to the mainland when he was 16. And he had $20 in his pocket. Like, this is like his story. I had $20 in my pocket, and I was hired to work on a farm in New Jersey. And I went and I worked there for one day, realizing I was in way over my head. I didn't know what I was doing. And then he left to Camden to live with a cousin. And it's like, again, you know, he not family. He didn't speak English. He learned speaking English in restaurants in Brooklyn, washing dishes. And this is partly his story. And I'm a horror writer. So I think the challenge for me was to try to create as much as emotion and add like the historical like realization that Puerto Ricans really exist. I mean, like a lot of us, but Puerto Ricans do exist in this state where, you know, we are Americans, but then we feel like we're not. And then we go back to the mainland and we're not really Puerto Rican. And I think a lot of immigrants can identify with that story. And so I wanted to really delve into that place of growing up and honestly feeling ashamed of being, you know, Puerto Rican, because people would say things about my hair and my father's accent. And so it was discussing that. And I felt really sad for my father that I was so embarrassed of him, like picking me up from school in his, you know, traditional like Puerto Rican shirt. And it's like, oh, you know, it's the 80s and I want to feel like everybody else. And so, but then realizing as I grew up, it's okay not to be like everybody else. And it's okay to finally accept where I come from and accept that their story is part of my story, and their struggle, the reason they struggled was for me. So it was a huge emotional journey. I think that similar to what Alex had to process. So I think when I wrote it, and I'm also a poet, when I wrote it, I just kind of went straight through, and I just kind of, I think I locked myself in a room for like a weekend, and I would walk out in tears, and my husband was like, I know what you're writing.
That's a great story.
Thank you. It's it deals with a lot of folklore and history, and like, you know, the U.S. military involvement in Puerto Rico. So I try to touch upon a lot of things that kind of defined my upbringing and my father's upbringing as well.
Lori is saying, my mom had a similar story. I think it's important to document their stories to preserve their history and their perseverance. Lori, thank you for sharing that and for being with us here tonight. Let's talk about the preservation of stories. So, Cynthia, as you went back in your mind and into your childhood and into that shame and the embarrassment, I mean, growing, especially when you're a tween, oh my God, I'm cringy just thinking of myself at the age of 13. I was so horribly awkward, and everything embarrassed me, mortifying, just the whole world was, you know, everything was horrifying. And I think there's that extra level of of layers that you're talking about, that, you wanted desperately to fit in. You didn't feel fully American. You go to Puerto Rico. You didn't feel like you fit in there. Kids were making fun of your dad's accent and your hair. Let's talk about when you went to write the story. Did you write down like these most painful moments or the things that stood out to you, which of course are the most painful, and then from there creative narrative arc, or how did this go?
I knew I wanted it to be, I knew I wanted it to be a horror, like have like some type of horror element. So I wanted to make sure there's like some kind of supernatural, ghostly element throughout. And I've kind of jotted that down, and then I jotted down like the folklore that I really wanted. And in terms of, I wanted to write the most painful experiences that I encountered growing up. And then I also wanted to write down the experiences that my father told me that I just knew were like grueling to him and like embarrassing for him. Like, he couldn't get a cup of coffee in Chicago in the 1960s without, in some neighborhoods, without being kicked out because his accent. And he had described to me about being scared to speak to, encountering a coworker on the train. They were scared to like talk to one another because they would only know how to speak Spanish, and they didn't want to, bring attention to themselves. So I wrote those down, and then I kind of started off when I was a little girl, and the most embarrassing for me experience about my dad, and I kind of carried that through. But so it was a lot of just kind of coming to terms that he was hurt and I was hurt, but I was also adding to his hurt as well. And so, children growing up and teens and, coming from different cultures, we want to fit in. And so I kind of wanted to also talk a little bit about that, wanting to fit in, but then into adulthood, realizing my cultural pride in myself and my dad. It took time, but I'm,
Cynthia, why did you want to write the most painful parts?
I wanted people to, especially for the Puerto Rican experience, I wanted people to understand that a border does exist between the island and the mainland, and it's more of like a psychological border. And I needed Americans, U.S. Americans, to really understand what we encountered. And I remember after Hurricane Maria, reading a lot of stories of Puerto Ricans who came to the mainland temporarily to live with family, saying that they had never felt such hate until they came to the mainland. And they have never experienced racism until they came to the mainland. And how many were just so happy to return to Puerto Rico, even though, there were spots without homes or electricity. But it was that hate that they were just shocked by. It's like, we're Americans, but we're hated. And I wanted people to understand, we don't feel like we belong. We feel like we're hated. And in some instances and some situations, we're scared for our lives. So I needed people to really understand that.
Thank you for helping people understand that. Because I think one thing that really shocked me in the last two elections is how many people actually didn't realize that Puerto Rico is part of the United States. Is seeing people say, oh, immigrants, or, as though this is another country, instead of a place that is part of the United States. It's just, like Hawaii, not attached to continental states. Right. Nobody has that confusion about Hawaii. Right. But a lot of people have confusion about that with Puerto Rico. So it's strange.
I think I included a bit in the story. I can't remember, of applying to Gap when I was in high school, and the manager asking me if I had papers, and I was like 16 or 17, like, what are you talking about?
Yes, papers are my American driver's
license. So
yeah. Gabino, as you are the keeper, the gatekeeper, the curator, the collector of these stories, and you are reading people's, to Cina's point, horror, poetic, most deeply painful experiences that she mined from her experience. You're reading Alex's, story of this father and the boat and realizing, oh my God, what have I done? How did you both hold space for all of that, gently shape it into the book that it became, and find the balance between not just totally bumming everybody out, but finding resilience and hope, but being true to the fact that this is freaking painful. What was that like for you?
There are a lot of hard, painful, bloody, violent, ugly, racist moments in that book. But Alex's story is the last story in the book, and the last line of 90 Miles is "It was hope." And each one of those stories either has a silver lining, some sliver of hope. It says something that will touch your heart. And if I can tell you a very horrible story, but you get emotional about it, then that author did their work. And these two authors right here did their work fantastically. I knew that it was going to be very diverse. I knew that it was going to bring in stories from many cultures. I knew that we were going to have to struggle with having a whole bunch of stories that feature Spanglish. These two stories we're talking about right now have it in there. I knew the language was going to be hard to process. There's a lot of racist language in there, but I knew that each one of the stories that I was going to pick, I was not afraid of the work, because I knew some of those stories were just going to reach deep down inside and poke me in the heart, and it was automatically. Sometimes I just had to read them one time, and sometimes less. Halfway through the story, I was like, yes, this is. I didn't have to get to the end of 90 Miles to say this is the line that absolutely makes the story. It was an easy process. It was about lives. It was about human beings pushed into really dark corners, and they all fit together really well despite being very different.
But Gabino, how was it an easy process if you're reading Cina's most painful, searing, like just the things that hurt her the most, and Alex is writing his most painful stuff? Did you ever have to walk away, or were you like, nope, I'm fine, I'm cultivating this for a reason?
It's this funny thing that happens to me when I put on the editor hat. I take away the writing hat and I put on the editor hat, and my reaction is like, my God, I'm destroyed. I have to share this. I'm absolutely obliterated. I need to take a break, go have some coffee, listen to the birds. A lot of people need to read this. This has to be published. There's a, I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a scene in 90 Miles where there's blood in the water. And that's the type of scene that as a horror writer myself, I'm like, my God, Alex, where did you go?
That means a lot. Thank you.
And then immediately I go, I have to share this with the world. The word spick shows up in Cina's story, and I was like, this is a really strong word. And I remember every single time that I've been called that, that's horrible. I have to share it. This has to see the light of day, so that more people feel this awful way, and then maybe that will drive some to act better, behave better, love harder, and and then you take off that editor hat and you go like, what am I doing? But then you put it back on, and then you get all the rest of the stories together, and you share them with the world, and then they win awards and do all sorts of amazing things.
Gabino, let me ask you, when you were reading, it's funny because not funny, it's coincidental because some Black friends of mine just started a thing on Instagram where they shared the first time that they were called the most hurtful word out there, and everyone shared their story of when they first were the recipient of that word. Right. And you're sharing this. For you, did you ever consider not using that word or that part of the story? Or you were like, no, I want to talk about this I guess I'm balancing the preservation of painful history with, you don't want to eliminate it. You want to honor it. You want it to think, but you don't want to re-wound. How'd you do that? And Cynthia, what about I want to hear first from Gabino, then Cynthia, about the choice to include this word.
It's like the appearance of the N-word in literature. I'm not fine. I'm not okay as a book reviewer, as a literary critic, as a creative writing professor. I'm not 100% okay with white dudes from the Midwest using it a bunch of times in their novels to give them authenticity. However, I've had a bunch of Black friends tell me, hey, my life is before and after being called the N-word the first time. If they have to go through that, it's their story to tell. If they write an amazing story and it has that word in it, I want to share it. And that was the case with Cina's story. It fit in there. It carried a message. It wasn't just, here's a slur. It's, here's a slur. Look at the context and look at where it comes from. And look at the heaviness of that word in a historical context. And then I think those words do not deserve to be left out of literature, because they are still being used daily. And as long as they're being used, we are here with our words to fight them.
Cynthia, over to you. Did you consider not using that word? Was it an automatic yes for you? Because walk us through that decision and choice.
It was the first time I was ever called that word. And so I remember just being completely like taken aback. It was my first day of college to be called that word by a white male classmate. In my high school, I went to 90% Hispanic and Black high school. So to step into college, the first person in my family to step into a college classroom to that first day, be called that. I came home in absolute, like, devastated. I was told my father, I'm not going back. And my father's like, you can go work in the factory with your mother, or you can go back because you're going to be called that again and again, whether it's going to be at a job or anywhere else. So you might as well get your college degree. And I was just like, okay, and then I think I remember still being kind of on the fence the next day. And my dad was like, all right, so I've had like dogs, sent to attack me in situations. And so this is a word. Like, I've been in situations where my life was, I want you to take that pain and go back to school and get your degree. And so that's why it was important for me to use that word and to use that situation, because that situation really fueled me going through to graduate with honors, get a master's, get a second master's, and be nearly completed with my PhD, because it's like, you're not going to stop me. Like, everything that could have been done to my family has been done and said. So, it's painful. It's something that I don't forget. That's why I wrote about it. And it was the first time I've ever shared that experience with the public. And it was very difficult to do. But when I talked to Gabino about the anthology, I was like, okay, I'm going to go someplace where I don't think I've gone before. So, yeah.
Cynthia, I want to say I am so deeply sorry that happened to you. It's unfathomable, and I'm so deeply sorry. My heart hurts picturing you on your first day of college. Being so brave to go. I was also the first in my family to go to college, and I know that vulnerability and that excitement and that intimidation, and the idea of 18-year-old Cynthia showing up at her college and having this horribly callous white boy
but I think
attack you this way is I just want to say I'm so sorry.
Thank you so much. But that first day of college, I met my mentor who died in 2015. And he was a black man, one of the first African American journalists in the city of Chicago. And he was my mentor until he died, like, in his late 90s. And so it was like such a horrible thing happened to me my first day. But to meet this, elderly powerhouse of an African American in the Chicago communication scene, that changed my life. So I saw light and dark that day. And I just want to quickly say, my husband's Mexican. And so, just even seeing his family's experience and his father coming to this country and the situations that his parents endured, it's been really interesting to see both stories play out in my family. And I have 2 children. And so both of my boys are Mexican and Puerto Rican. So it's going to be interesting to see their upbringing, and I'm widely protective of them, but I feel like knowing the stories of our family and the and the sadness that has happened. But like Gabino and Alex said, there's hope, and we've seen really good things as well through this pain.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Melissa is saying, hi, Sarah. Hey, Melissa. Great to have you. Oh, look, there's your little dog. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so great to have you. Melissa is saying, what a wise and strong mom Cynthia has, and how brave of her to continue. Yes, how brave of you to continue, and well done. Well done. Cynthia, let's talk about what you want people to walk away from your story having felt, besides getting a glimpse into this experience, getting the chance to walk in your shoes, in this Puerto Rican American experience, and the folklore aspects that you brought in as a horror poet. I've never met a horror poet before. What do you want people to walk away having felt, having learned, having shifted? How do you want us to leave?
I especially want people from diverse backgrounds to definitely seek out their history. It's something that I didn't really experience or want to seek out when I was a teen. I mean, teenagers. I contributed a lot of that to being a stubborn teenager and wanting to be cool in the 80s and 90s with the, but it wasn't until like college where I really started seeking out my history and my family story that I just fell in love with the persistence of these people and the perseverance of these people. And I think that if you come to this story and you're from a diverse background, an immigrant background, to please like go talk to your elders and just learn about their stories, because I talk to my dad so much and I'm always recording his stories, and I wish I had done that when I was younger. For other people, I think just to understand that, especially for the Puerto Rican identity, Puerto Ricans in New York are different than Puerto Ricans in Florida, than Puerto Ricans in Chicago, than Puerto Ricans in Montana. I think, we all have our cultural identity, but then we also take on the identities of the locations that we're in and the mainland, and that makes us very unique people. And we are American, and we're proud to be diverse people with fascinating history.
Alex, what about you? What do you want us to leave? And then Gabino, I'm coming for you next, so get ready. Alex, what do you want people to walk away from 90 Miles, having learned, having felt, having experienced? Walk us through it.
I mean, I wanted them to understand that, these stories all come from they're all human stories. They're not statistics or factoids or little bits of data. Like every person trying to cross those waters to get to Miami, whether they made it or failed, is a person with relatives and a family and a home and hopes and dreams. And it sounds trite to say that, but I really wanted to personalize this thing that to many outside of kind of the Cuban American Miami to Havana ecosystem doesn't personalize. They see it as this thing that just happens on their TV, and they can turn it off and they can ignore it or, go to a different website. But, when I was growing up, Cuba was this very distant other, this place that my grandparents had lived a life in, and this place that my parents thought of with great nostalgia, and where we still had family over there, and there was this great divide. We couldn't just call them and chat with our cousins or, see how things are going. And it was politically and economically so different. It was just, I grew up listening to like Cuban talk radio, and it was very politicized and divisive. And I don't say that in a critical way. I just say it's the truth. We were here, we were in Florida, and there was another contingent in Cuba that hadn't made it over, but a lot of it wasn't for lack of desire. I think so many people risked their lives to make that journey, and so many made it and were able to start new lives, but a lot of people didn't make it, and it's not an easy trip. So I wanted to kind of boil down what I think a lot of people saw as just data and make it human.
I love that. Because I think it is easy to just change the channel or to think, oh, that's hard, or oh, those poor people, or oh, that's annoying, or whatever, whatever the experience is. These are humans. These are people with mothers and daughters or families and friends and hopes and dreams, and maybe they like spicy food and maybe they don't, and maybe they like bananas and maybe they don't like pears. They're full-fledged interesting people.
Cuban food is actually not spicy at all. Yeah.
I mean,
No. It's just a funny thing. Like it's funny because it always, it's just Cuban food is more about flavor than spice. I'm not saying you meant that, but it's just funny that comes up. And I think when it's not your own experience, it's easy to just kind of move along. But I think we're at a time where we have to have empathy, because things are so crazy on so many different levels that if we can't empathize with our fellow person on this planet, like we're losing it.
Yeah. And just to clarify, I wasn't.
No. I know.
I was saying that people have individual preferences, like my husband doesn't like bananas because he has a texture issue. Like, I mean, who doesn't like a banana? It's so weird.
My husband too. He doesn't like bananas.
Who are these people? I love bananas.
I'm from the Caribbean. I love bananas.
I'm like, fine, I'll more bananas for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, people when you look at people and curious little things about them, they become full-fledged humans and not just a statistic. Oh my God, Kelly Garrett doesn't like bananas either. Kelly,
I thought I knew you, Kelly.
Like bananas, and thank you so much for being here. But why don't you like bananas? Oh my God, Gabino, over to you. What do you, and Kelly, I'm waiting on your banana answer. So get it.
Do you like bananas, Gabino?
No.
Now here's the thing. I like bananas, but when she mentioned the texture thing, I was like, I can see that.
Yeah.
So I think we need an anthology of banana-inspired crime stories to figure the whole thing out.
Plata Noir.
The Plátano Chronicles.
I don't understand texture issues. What are you talking about? Kelly saying she doesn't like the taste, but she does like banana pudding because the flavor is masked. Oh my God.
See, I can't eat anything with banana flavor, but I love bananas. Like banana flavor is just not.
Oh my God, Lori's saying that's bananas. Okay, bananas. Lori for the win. Oh, that would be the name of the anthology. That's bananas.
That's bananas.
Hillary is saying, Kelly, you are 100% accurate. They are far too squishy. Oh my God, I didn't know everyone had such strong opinions about bananas. Kelly saying, Hillary, you feel me. Oh my God, I had no idea that there were such strong ideas about bananas. Melissa is saying, yes, we have to be who we are. I'm proud of our heritage. That's in response to you, Cynthia. Gabino, over to you. You curated, you shaped, you gently molded, you brought in some pain, you brought in some rage, you brought in some sadness, you brought in some hope, you served it all up on a platter. What do you want people to leave this collection, this curation with?
Well, first of all, it wasn't labor that I did completely alone. Chantel Osman is an amazing co-editor, and she put in a lot of work here. So shout out to Chantel.
She's great.
Here's the thing. For a very long time, because I've been in this gig a long time, and it wasn't normal. And then I take a look at the last Anthony Awards. Best short story, Alex Segura with a Cuban experience. Best first novel, David Heska Wembley Waiting, who's a Sikangula Kota. Best novel of the year, Sean Cosby with a Black Appalachian novel about their experiences. It's about damn time. We've opened that door, and it took a lot of kicks and a lot of elbows and a lot of shoulders to kick that thing open. And now we have Celia Moreno Garcia as a New York Times bestseller author. Blackfeet author Stephen Graham Jones is a New York Times bestselling author. This is an invitation to two things. Number one, let's rehumanize the discourse around migration. And number two, read about what other people go through. All right. Don't read the news about what's going on with trans women in the U.S. Go read what trans women are writing. Learn about them, learn about their experiences, develop that sense of empathy. You're not going to be an expert on anything that is not your own experience, but you can learn a lot through great narratives. There's a whole bunch of them in that book. There's a whole bunch of them in the Anthony nominations list and in all of those winners. It's an invitation. The door's open. Go read about other people and go build that empathy and that knowledge. And that will make all of us collectively a little bit better. I
love that. And, I don't have the immigrant experience, but I have the experience of traveling to different countries. And I wish that everyone did have that, because I think even just the experience of traveling to another country where you don't speak the language, where you maybe don't even read the language because they're not using the same alphabet, where you look different and are treated different and are noticed and are looked at and are whispered about, is extraordinarily helpful in building empathy. And when you can't read the signs and you're sick and you're trying to find the pharmacy so you can buy some medicine, but you can't read the boxes of medicine, you don't know which is the cough syrup, it is hard and it is painful and it is extremely empathy building, because when you come home and you can read everything, you maybe can be a little more patient with the people who are still learning and maybe have more empathy for them. And so I feel like that's such a key experience is traveling. And if you can't afford to travel, read a book, because that's a way to armchair travel, or you're afraid of flying or whatever. So I absolutely love that. Kelly Garrett is saying all of the Anthony winners are crime writers of color members. Yay. She said, as are Alex and Cina. Kelly Garrett, yes, an amazing, amazing thing. Especially, I mean, I am new to the mystery space. I've only been doing this series for a year and a half. I'm still writing my first mystery. I'll say I was shocked by how white the mystery space was. Publishing in general is very white. I'm from Philadelphia. I moved to Boston. I was like, wow, Boston's white. And then I noticed the publishing space was really white. And then I segued into mysteries and I was like, my God, this is mind-bendingly white. And I'm starting to see that shift and that awakening belatedly and slowly, but it's happening and it's exciting.
Well, and crime writers of color is such an important part of that. It's really just a community of authors that uplift and help each other. They're members from every walk of the career, whether you're a super best-selling veteran or you just are shopping your novel around to get an agent. It's really, I can't stress enough how important it's been to my, success, however you want to define yourselves, but it's it's just a community. It's not even a formal organization, but it's a network of people that just communicate and share stories, share advice, and it's a place where you can come and kind of get the guidance you need, because it's the only way we can succeed, by helping each other.
Yes.
And Kelly's awesome, and that should be more than enough for you to want to join.
Yes.
We work so hard.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Hillary is saying, each of these three authors who, I'm just copying this up for a second, Cina, because I can barely see you. Each of these three authors whom I enjoy beyond all belief is an incredible asset to the writing community as a writer and as an advocate for other voices too. Tell us what books we should be looking for that you feel have the same power as Pa que tú la sepas. And I'm probably saying that wrong, so somebody correct me.
Pa que tú lo sepas.
Gracias.
That's another anthology that Cina and I are both in. That
Okay.
was edited by Angel Luis Colon.
Angel Luis Colon. Yeah,
okay.
Is another crime writer of color. Yeah.
Okay. What other things I love this question. Thank you so much. So tell us what other books we should be reading, you guys, y'all.
I just finished Velvet Was the Night, which is Celia Moreno Garcia's latest book. It's set in 1970s Mexico, and she's done a lot of sci-fi. She wrote Mexican Gothic, which was huge. But this is, I think, even better than that book, and it's just fantastic.
That's exactly the book I was going to recommend, because it's
sorry. I don't, I'm so bad when I'm put on the spot, but I just literally just finished it for an event, so I was like blown away by it.
So her last book that Laura published, Untamed Shore, that's a crime book too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Alex, your top recommendation you just stole from Cina. I'm popping it into the comments. Okay, so Alex's recommendation is Velvet.
Velvet Was the Night.
Velvet Was the Night. Cina, since Alex stole your top recommendation, give us another one. Or do you need a minute? You can go.
One more quick one. By Angel Luis Colon, Hell Chose Me. I'm going to go ahead and give him a shout out.
Okay, Hell Chose Me is Cina's choice by Angel Luis Colon. I'm going to pop that in the link as well as the comment. Gabino, what about you?
Oh, I can give you a whole list. Sylvia's book is terrific. Every single winner this year at the Anthony's is absolutely terrific.
Cina's book is fantastic.
Cina's book, Children of Chicago, is absolutely fantastic. I have not seen a negative review of that anywhere, and I absolutely loved it. And I wrote one of those very positive reviews. I just finished Joy Harjo's Poet Warrior, which is another memoir. She's a national treasure. I think it came out today. It's an absolutely fantastic book. But Stephen Graham Jones, My Heart is a Chainsaw, is a genre unto itself. And it's either out now or will come out very soon. And I want to mention that we've been talking about Kelly. Kelly has a book coming up, and it should be.
Yes, you stole my.
Yeah.
My God, you guys are all just killing each other.
So put those two bleeps on your radar. Alex has a book coming very, very soon. Because this year is running. I don't know where. There it is. Secret Identity. I don't know where this year is running, but it is running really fast. So March will be here before you know it. And you should go pre-order that and Kelly's book as soon as you can.
Yeah, Like a Sister. I was lucky enough to read an early version of it, and it's fantastic. It's really, she wrote a very great cozy series, but this is a next level book for her. It's domestic suspense, really strong. So Like a Sister.
If you like cozies, I want to recommend Mia Manansala's Arsenic and Adobo, because I love Mia. So
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yay. Okay, perfect. And our last author, Vera Curian, also recommended Arsenic and Adobo, which is fantastic. Alex, your next book out March 15th. Tell us about that book.
Secret Identity is set in 1975 New York, and it's a story of a Cuban woman, Carmen Valdez, who comes to New York to work in comic books. She grows up reading comics, and it's kind of how she learns to speak English, coming from Cuba in the 60s as a child. And she wants to write comics. That's her dream, but she's being blocked basically by the industry, which was very male dominated at the time and still really has been for a long time. Her boss at the comic company she works at basically says, look, I can give a job to any of my friends. There's a line around the door. I would never give it to my secretary. But then a colleague approaches her and says, I want you to help me write this story. You'll have to ghostwrite it at first, but don't worry, we'll eventually give you the credit. And she sees it as her only path forward. So she ghostwrites this new character called the Legendary Lynx, which is a kind of vigilante superhero. And it's a hit. It becomes a huge hit for this very small company, and her collaborator is murdered. So no one really knows that Carmen has been involved in this character, and she has to basically reinvest, kind of put on the amateur sleuth hat and investigate the death of her friend to not only solve the murder, but reclaim this character. And it's interspersed throughout the book, but there are actual graphic novel pages in the novel drawn by Sandy Jarrell, who's done like every major superhero character and has a great like timeless style. So yeah, it's my love letter to comics and to noir and Miami and New York all at once.
That is quite a love letter. But I love this idea that, because so many of us have been promised, when you're in a more vulnerable position, oh, do this for the exposure, or, oh, I'll take care of you later. But that's entirely dependent on A, that person staying alive, and B, that person keeping their word. So if they don't, we're kind of SOL. So I'm already intrigued. I'm putting the link to pre-order in the comment now, y'all. So grab it. Anna Serrano would like to know. Okay, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Anna would like to. Oops, I scrolled past it accidentally. I'm going back. Anna would like to know: will there be signed books of both sides available online? Can we get signed copies of the book, you guys? You all?
Sure,
we can make that happen. Yeah.
How will Anna find that?
We'll talk to Sean.
Yes, let's talk to Chantel, who's probably paying attention right now.
Chantel right now, her little fingers are flying.
Let's summon her now.
Oh my God, let's summon her. It would be amazing if she just popped on. Chantel, summon her. Okay, Anna, we'll get back to you. So follow up with me offline. Shoot me a DM, and I will find this for you, or shoot any of these authors a DM on Facebook, Twitter, through their websites. We will get you a signed copy. And we're heading, I always start thinking about holiday season now. I'm like, what gifts can I get? So I'm just saying this would be a good gift. I want to thank the extraordinary Kelly Garrett for being here. And I am popping a link into for Kelly's book, because you guys, I keep saying you guys, and I'm trying to stop saying that because I'm trying to break the patriarchy. But Kelly's book is amazing, y'all. I'm replacing you guys with y'all.
Yeah, I've been saying y'all a lot more.
I've been trying to do it, but I instead of that, I'm just going to take the male tone out of guys. I've now declared it is now gender free. Kelly's link is now in the link. So everybody grab a copy of that because Kelly Garrett is amazing. Melissa saying empathy along with kindness is so important and an integral part of being human beings. Yes, speaking to Gabino and Alex and Cynthia, talking about the empathy that you want to create, the understanding you want to create through sharing these stories. Melissa, well said. Thank you so much for being here. Kelly saying, oh, thanks so much for the shout out. Alex has done a ton to make sure spaces like VoucherCon are more inclusive and welcoming. Yay, Alex! And Kelly, how lovely it is to shout his work out. Thank you for that. Just scrolling through, make sure I didn't miss anybody else. Kelly saying again, thanks for the shout out. And yes, a secret identity, Kelly. Yay. Kelly's also saying Mia's book is amazing. It was a book of the month selection.
It's so good.
Okay, and can someone tell me what is Mia's book?
Arsenic and Adobo.
Okay, perfect. I put the link in the comments already. I was ready to look up another one. She's saying secret identity is so good. Yay, Alex. Karen is saying this interview was great. Thank you all for your time. Karen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. I'll make sure I didn't miss anybody. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, David. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Alma. Thank you, everyone. Julia, for being here. Thank you, Benjamin. I'm scrolling through, making sure I didn't miss anybody. Thank you all so much. Parting words, anything you wish I'd asked or you'd like to share? Alex, we'll kick off with you.
No pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the story
is collapsing under the pressure.
No. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, both sides. It was an honor to be part of the book, and it's always great to be alongside so many great writers like Cina and edited by Gabino and Chantel. It was really, seeing it nominated was a thrill, and winning was like beyond my wildest dreams. So it was really a dark story. I don't, I usually try to inject a little more humor and lightness into things, even my crime novels, but this one just came out just very bleak, and still it managed to be hopeful. So I think that felt like the right note, and I'm glad people responded to it.
Karen is saying, thank you. This interview is great. Thank you all for your time. Lori is saying, thank you everyone for this honest talk about important issues. Lori, yes, we're all about the honesty and the authenticity. Sharon saying, thank you for another great conversation, another great event. Sharon, thank you for joining us from Minnesota. Always wonderful to see you. Gabino, over to you.
I'll keep it simple. There's a lot of amazing authors, so go read as many books as you can and be awesome to one another.
Cina, your turn.
Thank you to Gabino. Thank you to Chantal and Agora, and thank you to people like Kelly and crime writers of color. It's because of opportunities like this and spaces like this that give us the space to get our stories out. And it's been wonderful to have support. So thank you to everybody for making this happen and for giving crime writers of color opportunities.
Thanks for having us.
I want to say one more thing, which is this. I think so many times, as a white woman and as a reader, a lot of us can feel like, oh, these problems are too big. What could I possibly do? I can't fix this. I can't solve this. What power do I have? So I just want to remind everyone that every purchase is a vote. We don't just vote every 4 years. Every time you swipe that credit card, every time you hand over your cash, you are voting for the books you want to see published. You're voting for the authors you want to see published. You're voting for the books you want to see reprinted. You're voting for the world you want to see. You're voting for the books you want to see on the shelf. You're voting for the stores that you want to see succeed. So what books you purchase, what purchases you make, and where you buy from, every single component of that is a vote. And that is your power. And that is your choice. Is every time you buy something and where you buy it from, that's your vote. And it's empowering because you have that power to make that change and demand that change. If you want to see more books by authors of color, buy more books by authors of color. If you want to see more Latino authors on the shelf, buy more books by Latino authors. This is how we do it. We demand the change through our purchases. So I want to just remind everyone, if you're sitting at home thinking, oh, I wish this was more diverse, or I wish these stories had more, we had more stories like this, you can make that happen. Swipe that credit card, get it going. You create this change. And once I realized that and that clicked for me, I felt energized and I felt empowered. And I want to share that energy and that empowerment with everyone else. Everyone deserves to see themselves on the page, on the stage, on the screen, on the billboard. And the way that we do that is one purchase at a time and one tweet at a time and one Instagram story at a time. So tweet about these books, tweet about these authors. If you demand, if you don't have the money for the book, that's okay. Go to the library and put it on your wait list, because that creates demand too. We all have levers we can pull. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. And I will look forward to hosting you all when your next books come out. Thank you to my amazing mystery and thriller maven fam. To continue this conversation, join my free Facebook group. I will see you next Monday for #Mystery Mondays, because Mondays can be murder. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
All right.